Welcome to Propaganda Loves You, the show that asks and answers the question, how does it benefit the current administration to not allow states to regulate artificial intelligence? That's a question that we might answer today, or try to. I'm Cody, your host for today, joined by Arthur and Joe. And today, guys, we're going to hit on some more midterm updates. I've got some stuff from New York 21 that I want to talk about. There's been multiple primary debates between the candidates. And I think we're going to go around the horn and talk about some races that you guys are interested in, either local to your area or areas that you guys have been previously. And if there's time, we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in Texas with James Tellerico and kind of do an update on some AI political ads that have been out there. I've seen some also in New York races for governor specifically. So it'll be interesting to talk about that for a little bit. But before we get into any of that, I do have a quiz for both of you. So 2 weeks ago, our last core episode, we kind of introduced the 4 different candidates that were running for the congressional seat, New York 21, that covers the Adirondack Park, and it's actually one of the largest districts in New York State. So we talked about Blake Gendabinian. I always forget how to say his name, I've said it so many times. I think it's like a soft G, Gendabinian. But anyway, Stuart Amaral, Anthony Constantino, and Robert Smallin, the four candidates that are running for this. And so the quiz today is going to be on them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you guys a position without telling you which candidate this is coming from. And you guys got to try and guess, is this coming from Blake, Stuart, Anthony, or Robert? And so just as a quick refresher on the 4, Blake was the one that basically was running for 2 years. He's got the complete endorsement of all the Democratic committees that are in New York 21. He's a farmer. Stuart Amaral's more the progressive, the Lake Placid restaurant owner that entered the race kind of late. And, one of the reasons that he did was for his employees that actually got grabbed by ICE. Anthony Constantino, CEO of Sticker Meal, who's endorsed by Trump. And then Robert Smallin, who's the Republican assemblyman for the 118th District, New York, a retired Marine colonel, and has 12 of 15 of the county chair endorsements for the Republican Party. So those are the 4. So it's going to be coming from one of them. You guys ready? I think this one might be the easiest one to start with, and it's a question that was raised on ICE. And so this was the response on what the candidate would do regarding defunding ICE. So candidate's response was, we need to dismantle and replace ICE as we know it. Replace it with an agency that respects the rule of law, due process, and the dignity of all people.
That would be Stuart.
That was Stuart Amaral. He's the only one of the 4 that actually goes that far to say we need to completely defund and rebuild this institution.
Sounds like a winner to me. Heard everything I need to hear.
Blake basically said he does not want to defund ICE, but wants body cams, leadership change, and no masks on agents, basically having rules that they actually have to follow. Both Republicans said they'd vote yes for the additional $70 billion in ICE funding with no hesitation. So that's the difference in policy positions that are on those 4. Okay, so next question. Who said this specifically about ICE funding? We need to support our frontline workers. ICE, law enforcement, sheriffs, everybody that has to do a frontline job deserves respect.
Really good, center of the line kind of quote,
Yeah, that's giving professional Democrat.
Ooh.
I'm going to go with Blake.
Nice, that's good. Just for difference, I got to go with Robert.
Smallin? This one's actually, this one was tricky on purpose. So it's actually Anthony Constantino that said this. But Robert Smallin's position and Blake's position really are not that much different.
I was thinking that Anthony was going to come out and be just super dogmatic on ICE. So it did throw me off.
Expand it. We need more.
The budget is not enough. We need to double the budget next,
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so this question was more about Iran and the War Powers Resolution. So which candidate said the following? So the actions of one unstable man made unilaterally and in violation of the Constitution have made Americans less safe. Congress must stop abdicating its authority and invoke the War Powers Act.
I got to go with Blake.
I was going to say Blake or Stuart. I feel like either one of them could say that.
Yeah, yeah. So who actually said that specifically was Stewart. However, Blake also supports the War Powers Act. The way he frames it is a little bit different. Basically, what he said was that rural districts are 16% of the population, but nearly 50% of military recruits. And so, essentially, framing it as we need to be protecting people and not sending them to war for no purpose, and we unduly bear the cost as a rural district of war when that occurs. So both are in support of the War Hours Act, just framed it a little bit differently there. Both of the Republicans deferred entirely to Trump. Constantino said, trust the president. He's the creator of peace. And Smolin said, I support what's happening, and I know it's coming to an end soon. So very different answers when it comes to Republican versus Democrat in this case. All right, question number 4. Well, so this is related to energy, and energy independence was the question that actually came from that. So the answer was, I support President Trump's energy agenda completely. We need to drill, baby, drill. Any thoughts on who might have said that one?
I'm hoping it's Anthony.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, either one of the Republicans, but the drill, baby, drill. That's kind of corny.
Like a youthfulness, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to convince you of my answer. I'm sorry.
But like, you're also, I'm trying to like game the system and think about, you're going to try to have an answer from each candidate. So it makes me think maybe this is the old Colonel just because we haven't got one of his yet.
Yeah. Or it's like a Larry David moment from Stewart, and he's like answering in like complete
So this one was also Anthony Constantino. Smolin actually here called for pipeline permits and rolling back crazy green climate laws. And I think Constantino basically attacked Smolin for having a Chinese solar farm in his land and being with Democrats on the Green New Deal. It was actually really funny. Like the whole debate was basically the Republicans attacking each other personally, but agreeing with each other on almost every single policy perspective. So it was a really, really strange debate, if you want to call it that. All right. So the last question that we've got here, who shook hands after the debate?
I think Robert's hitting up everybody, and Blake's probably giving him a handshake.
I got no read on these people's personalities at all. All I know are the websites you showed us and the things you've told us about them. Yeah. Anybody's guess.
Well, the Democratic debate was actually pretty civil, very civil for the most part, honestly. And one of the things they talked about was how they would respect the primary voters' decision, right? And then defer to whoever the primary winner is, and not try to stay on the party line to act as a spoiler or anything like that, or a different party line. But yeah, Robert Smolin refused to shake Anthony Constantino's hand at the end of the debate. Again, that one was very, very personal attack heavy, but agree on policy. So it was just a really interesting view of a microcosm of what we're going to talk about later in the episode when it comes to James Tellerico and the type of attacks people use.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of restaurant does Stewart own in Lake Placid?
It is called the Pickled Pig. I've actually never been in there, but it's like American style food. Like they've got like chilies and stuff like chili bowls and different things like that. I think he's got like a brisket bowl or something named after him.
Interesting.
So I actually don't know why I've never been there. I've always seen it and I'm like, man, that does look like a fun place. He wasn't the original owner. I guess he bought it from a friend when he moved into the area, but yeah.
I like that he's running because there's like a personal story tied to like how ICE is actually affected, and it puts him out in the community. That's nice.
Yeah, it is an interesting race. So like jumping into kind of like the update on New York 21, what I just wanted to focus on is we've got the actual primary election today, Tuesday, June 23rd. And so the update that I kind of wanted to give here that I didn't realize when we did our last episode, but is, last episode when we talked about New York 21, I think we talked about the last time a Democrat represented the area. It wasn't specifically New York 21 when it started because the borders have shifted and the names have moved around a little bit. We talked, I think it was Bill Owens that was the last Democrat that kind of served the area. And the reason that he did was because one of the moderate Republicans dropped out and endorsed another candidate, but there were basically two Republicans running versus one Democrat. So it split the vote, and then Bill Owens was able to take the seat. What's interesting about what's happening here is that both Constantino and Smolin have secured lines on the ballot, independent lines on the ballot outside of the Republican Party. So what could happen is if Smolin loses or if Constantino loses, they both could stay on the ballot in November. I think Constantino is like the conservative voices. I should look this up, but it's a separate ballot line that they're both on. So what could happen is we could end up in a very similar situation in November with both Blake and Stewart saying that they would support the eventual nominee, that they would not try to run an independent party line spoiler, versus these two candidates possibly could be both on the ticket with Smolin and Constantino. So we'll see how that shakes out, see if the Republican Party, like the National Party, steps in at some point and tries to meddle with the race more to, not create a disadvantage or not. But that's, where we are right now. The prediction markets, I know this is a crazy thing, but prediction markets, we talked about what does it look like for polling, right? We only had very limited polling on the Republican primary side. I think, February was Smolin up, or Constantino up by 27 points. And then in April, it was Smolin up by 10. But prediction markets have Constantino up by 80% and Smolin up by 21%, or compared to Smolin's 21%. So what I just find fascinating about that, what I really want to watch, is obviously what happens in this Republican primary. Are prediction markets a real indicator, or is someone trying to game the system with the prediction markets to make it look like there's more of a chance, right? Like, I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. What I'm going to include in this episode is the links to both of the primary debates for the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, as well as NPR, and I think it was like Northwards, put out candidate profiles on each one. We'll include all of that in the show notes here so you can take a look through. You get the candidate profile, you get their actual site. We'll include that again in this week, as well as the debates. So hopefully that will give everyone enough information that they would need, if they can watch that over the next day or so, to go and vote on Tuesday in this election. Any thoughts, any questions, or anything you guys want to bring up as far as New York 21?
Question, being an Oregonian, we do mail-in. How do y'all do it? And do you do a mail-in? Do you have to go physically stand in line? What's the deal?
Yeah, we have like a week of early voting. So you can request a mail-in ballot, or you can go vote early during the open voting period. So usually that's what we try to do. I'll probably vote for Stewart, just because he's more aligned with my, personal beliefs, I think. I don't know that he's got a good chance, just because, Blake's got all the backing of the establishment at this point. But either way, I think it'd be good to, I think it's good to have progressive candidates there right to the end, just to force people to have positions, right? Like on certain things, and come out with that. So
definitely. And it all starts
cool.
as like a small glimmer, like Mamdani didn't have a chance.
That's cool. I was just thinking too, like how cool it would be if your district had ranked choice voting. Like, I don't know how far the demographics have changed, what the younger generation in the Adirondack region is like. It'd be cool if all four of them were on the same ranked choice primary, and it wound up being a runoff between Blake and Stewart in the end. Just what the district actually thinks, but
it would be interesting. Like I don't know where New York 21 actually sits. Like it certainly is pockets of areas that go more Democratic than others, but I don't know how much it's changing. I will say, just anecdotally, right? This is just my own personal, like, driving around. I've seen so many Anthony Constantino signs, but he's literally like self-funding his campaign, paying people to go put signs up everywhere. Like, they'll go knock on people's houses, and even after they're like, I'm not interested, like, apparently, like, well, can we still put a sign up? It's just some anecdotal stuff. But I've seen more Stewart and Blake signs, I think, up and out than Smolin signs, which is interesting because he's kind of the moderate candidate. But definitely more Democratic signs out than I think I've ever seen in an election up here before. But granted, I've been gone for 15 years, so I don't know what that means, right? Maybe it's been like that from time to time. But for a midterm election, non-presidential, there's a lot out there right now. So
exciting times. What's the policy on littering in your region? Just
pretty strict. Pretty strict. So I think it's within 3 days, all signs need to be down of the midterm. So by the 26th of June, all of these political signs should be removed. But again, if they're not on someone's personal property and they're just happen to be on Route 28N or Route 30 or Route 3 in the middle of nowhere, call the Department of Transportation. They'll be glad to come in. Well, they probably won't be glad, but they will come and take them down. They have been doing that quite a bit in some of these areas. What's going on in your neck of the woods, Joe? What's happening over in DC other than a swamp being created? My God, that is just and people being arrested for
Oh, the pool, all the shenanigans with the pool. I don't know what's going on with that.
yeah.
Blaming it on vandals and stuff.
Yeah,
What
don't
was the point of draining it and painting it in the first place? Just to have a particular shade of blue that you liked or something?
American flag blue. Yeah. Don't
Uh,
don't don't take pieces of the rubberized pool that is floating to the top because apparently it's vandalism by pulling those out of the pool and acknowledging that it didn't work. But
yeah.
yeah.
So the only thing I really wanted to talk about with our region is Janeese Lewis George. So this was, I have a random memory of where I first saw her, which was at a DSA meeting in DC. And this was like the winter right before COVID. So maybe early 2020 or fall 2019. I can't remember which. But I went to one of the general body meetings for the DSA DC chapter just because I'd recently signed up with DSA and I was kind of curious about how the organizing worked, how the meetings ran and everything. So I had no idea what was going to actually happen at the meeting. I just showed up to see what it was like. And there were two political candidates visiting to give speeches that day. One was I can't remember his name, but he was challenging Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco's district. He was a progressive challenger of her who was unsuccessful. And there was another one who was running for DC Council seat, Ward 4, and that was Janeese Lewis George. And she showed up, and I think she had her mom with her. And I was just kind of struck by how normal this person was. She was just like a normal person who seemed kind of shy and not really certain about her public speaking voice, but had a very clear agenda about what she wanted to do for her district, had specific policies, and was really impressive with like how well prepared she was on like the policy side of things. But I was also just struck by like, oh, average people can just put together a vision and go for it and see what happens. So I was just like, not sure what was going to happen. But then later in the year, turned out she won her seat. And I was like, oh, this person who I randomly saw at this meeting who didn't seem like a big political figure, now she's a DC council member. And now she just swept DC's Democratic primary. I think she won her closest challenger in the primary was 14 points behind. And so she's basically on track to be DC's next mayor. So I thought it'd be cool just to kind of take a look at her website just to kind of see how it compares to the websites we looked at last time for the New York 21 candidates. We're sort of talking about how they build a narrative of themselves and they also have policies that they can list and the different kinds of things you can sort of glean as a voter by looking at their website. So I'll share the link in the chat. I'll also share my screen so you guys can see. But yeah, I thought the way that she builds her narrative on her website is kind of interesting. So she does have a narrative, like some of the other candidates in New York 21, everybody but Stewart had like a personal narrative that they were sort of describing themselves. So just quickly reading through the Meet Janeese page, Janeese Lewis George will be focused on making DC safe, affordable, and creating a government that listens and delivers. Her narrative reads, I'm Janeese Lewis George, the DC council member for Ward 4. I'm the daughter of a union postal worker and a third-generation Washingtonian who was raised in Ward 4. I'm a proud graduate of DC Public Schools, as well as Howard University School of Law. Starting in 2014, I served as the DC Assistant Attorney General in the Juvenile Section of the Public Safety Division under DC Attorney General Carl A. Bott and Unbossed. I fight for working families because I know firsthand what working people in DC are up against as a council member. I've worked to save tenant protections and make housing more affordable because when I was a kid, my family had to leave my childhood home due to rising rent. I voted for raises for working class people and strengthened worker protections because a good union job with a fair wage is what put dinner on the table for my family. I expanded paid family leave because when my dad got sick, I took time off to care for him, and everyone should be able to do that for people we love. As council member, I've made a point to always choose the side of DC residents, workers, and families. I led legislation that raised wages for early childhood educators, created good jobs for construction and retail workers, ended the sub-minimum wage for restaurant workers, increased SNAP food assistance for families and seniors, and improved traffic safety around schools. As mayor, I'll always side with the working people to make DC safe and affordable and create a government that listens to and delivers for residents in all 8 wards. I understand the urgency of the moment and the power DC has to make life better for everyone. So her programs include homes for all, good jobs for all, childcare for all, safe communities for all, excellent schools for all, affordable utilities, reliable transportation, economic development for a thriving DC, reduce red tape and rent for all small businesses, stand up for all DC, and arts and culture for all. And when you go to these platforms, each sort of policy or platform has like a short blurb page about it, and then a downloadable PDF with details about the specific policy proposals that she has on that issue. So it's a highly organized, highly detailed website for a candidate to have. And I just thought that the organizing and everything was really well done. The narrative was built in a really relatable way that didn't feel, I don't know, vague and wishy-washy. It felt very specific and relatable and transparent. It doesn't feel like I'm trying to be manipulated or anything. Sort of what you see is what you get. And she's very clear about her positions on everything. So yeah, I just thought I'd highlight her as a candidate to look out for, maybe the next Mom Donnie in DC. It'll be interesting to see politically how the Trump administration relates to the Janeese Louis George administration in DC. I know Trump sort of acted like he was going to push back on Mom Donnie a lot, but then Mom Donnie met with him and kind of seemed to win him over a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how Louis George relates to Trump as well in terms of like pushing back against his policies, but at the same time using whatever influence she can to get some concessions from the federal government that benefit DC residents. Any thoughts you guys have about Janeese Louis George?
Well, not really so many on Denise Lewis George, but on your how's Trump gonna deal with this if she gets elected? I mean, I think the quote was that he's already floated like, well, if a crazy in quotations here for everybody listening, but a crazy Democratic socialist gets elected, maybe we'll federalize DC. But going back to the actual narrative, I think what kind of stuck out to me and what I liked, and it shows a pretty clear difference between Janice as a candidate versus like the New York 21 candidates. She was able to really pull together personal life experience with how that shaped her decision making in office and the actions that she took in office, right? Or as a councilwoman, right? So like that connection of like, thing happened to me, this is how my life went, and then I went and I did something about it, and this is why. Like, it makes it a really clear, easy to follow narrative that also humanizes. So I did think that was a really good job. And then unlike some of the New York 21 candidates, except for Robert Smolin, they don't have any real like legislative background or anything to highlight. So a lot of their stories are, what I think I'm going to do or what I would. The other thing that I thought was interesting, we talked on our last episode about the difference between bulletized, quick soundbite type information versus like Stewart, who is kind of like very detailed. And this is the merge of those two things. You've got your quick, here's the easy messaging, and then if you want to dig, like, here's everything to dig, right? So I think that was a great example to bring up.
I loved where she says like her father got sick, so she took off time, and everybody should be able to do that. That's like a complete connection, because it just like puts labor where it ought to be and really prioritizes the humanistic value. So I love that too, and I think you're totally right about the information. I spent a lot of time on the AOC and Birdie's sites and all that stuff, and it definitely is like super reminiscent of that. So it's nice to see.
Yeah, totally. I just thought she was a good example of how to do a lot of these things really well and effectively. And the last thing I guess I wanted to do is just, stop sharing, but if you pull up her website and just click on the endorsements page, her endorsements page for all these organizations that are endorsing her campaign, how big the page is and how many of these endorsing organizations are unions. So after this first line, you got AFL-CIU at the top. Then these are all candidates, other council members from the DC Council or former council members who've endorsed her. And then all of the unions, they're on this page. So there's a transit union, SEIU, another chapter of SEIU for healthcare workers, UFCW Local, Unite Here Local 23, Local 25, Washington Teachers Union, just union after union after union endorsing her. And I just think when you have that many workers organizations endorsing a candidate, it's a good sign that they're going to do something good for working people. So I was just kind of struck by how many unions have endorsed our campaign.
I love that there's a CPAC in there. It's Caribbean American Political Action Committee and not the Conservative Political Action Committee. I feel like they could do a lot of fun stuff with that. Probably good.
This DC YIMBYs. Do you guys know about YIMBYs and NIMBYs?
I knew about NIMBYs, like basically, and not in my backyard. So this is the opposite of that.
Yeah, it's schismogenesis. YIMBYs are yes in my backyard.
Oh, thanks for that little preview there, Joe. So when is the actual election? Is this
Well, I
on the
think
same
it'll
day
be
as
the general
midterms?
now.
Gen term? Okay.
Well, I think,
yeah.
the DC, so she won the DC primary, and all the pundits basically say whoever wins the Democratic primary in DC is going to be mayor. There will be a general election unless something insane happens. She'll be the next mayor.
That's awesome. So Democratic Socialist, has there ever been a Democratic Socialist mayor in probably not, I assume, right? Because Mamdani was like a big deal for, well, obviously it's New York City, but
Yeah, for big cities, yeah. I know Bernie was a big deal in Burlington when he first won. It'd be interesting to see city by city which cities have prominent socialist mayors. I doubt DC has ever had a outspoken socialist mayor.
it's interesting. So there's a Wikipedia page on this list of socialist mayors in the United States. Interestingly enough, if you if you sort this by, let's see, the start term for these guys, there's a lot of socialist mayors, like back before the 1920s, a lot less in the 2020s eras. If you look at that, I don't know. That's worth digging into more, but yeah, interesting anecdote there.
Yeah, people don't really understand it until you read Howard Zinn or you do some digging or something, but socialism is like a deep American tradition. Like, international workers of the world started in the United States, in Chicago, I think. Socialism is a deep American tradition, historically.
All of these candidates that were mayors at some point before, from 1976 prior, were all Socialist Party of America.
There's a good amount of current ones too, and it's surprising reading some of the cities. Like, I know Irvine, California is actually kind of centrist. It has been Republican in the past, in Orange County. So it's interesting.
Yeah. DSA certainly took over. Yeah, right after. So it was like the first DSA was Ithaca, New York. Benjamin Nichols, 1989. Interesting. Okay. Oh, wait, no, sorry, I missed one. Gus Newport, Berkeley, California. California gets the first for DSA. Speaking of California, Arthur, what do you got going on? What are you paying attention to these days out there?
Well, we actually got our own socialist mayor race going on, which is awesome, and I'll get into that. But yeah, last time, we touched on the Prop 50, the redrawing of the map, and the fight that's going on. It looks like it's coming down to literally Sacramento in California, which is the state capital. And what's happening is, there's like a razor-thin margin in the House. It's like 218 to 212 with Republicans holding it. And I think there's like an independent might count as the Democrat there. So maybe 218 to 213. But, Prop 50 here is kind of like everybody's let loose and the referee is gone from the battlefield, and both parties are now just admitting that the rules are really a weapon. And so it looks like, it's coming down to 5 seats in California with Sacramento. So we're going to see how that plays out. The race I really care about is LA. It's the second biggest city in the US. And it came down to, right now the primaries are done. In the general election, it's just going to be Republican versus Democratic Socialist Nithya Raman. She's a DSA member and actually got into the election like hours before the deadline. The current candidate at the time was a TV Republican named Spencer Pratt.
Oh, yeah.
And she went from being third to overtaking him in election night, locking him out. And to the surprise of everybody, Spencer Pratt went off and just called fraud. He said that, he got Mike Johnson to come and say that you can't prove fraud, but you can feel it instinctively. And then they did a whole, digest here of the election. Pratt actually gained votes in every single batch, and Of course, it comes down to the fact that like deep blue California, it's going to be kind of like Joe's saying here with DC, like if you're the Democratic, candidate here voting the primary, you're going to win. So Pratt was, maybe a little too Republican. Then in Oregon, it's a little quieter here. We have, our primaries just got done. It looks like the big battlefield is OR5, which is the southern eastern part of Portland. And Republicans are really gunning for Janelle Binham, who is the first Black Congresswoman of Oregon. And the district competition is really harsh right now with, a lot of Republicans gunning for it. She's kind of centrist herself, like she owns a lot of McDonald's in the area. And she's a, self-described Christian. So maybe her values are more towards the center there. And then the governor race is really big in California. We have, Trump endorsed Steve Hilton, who made the general election versus Xavier Becerra. And so running on, it's like cost of living, the one place, anger is really real in California. I've experienced it myself. People are really upset with cost of living. You have the rich who are upset with like them building affordable housing near them. It's just a whole horrible place where the average like cost of a 1-bedroom apartment in Orange County was like $2,800. In San Francisco, it's higher than that. So anyway, it's a whole race in California to kind of see, Newsom's shadow here, like what's going to play out. And the whole redistricting gambit was Newsom's play. So there's a lot at stake here. We're going to see, we're hoping that it's going to be the Democrat Becerra here, but all progressives are gone. Yeah. So I think that's kind of it.
I was going to ask about the Spencer Pratt piece in that whole election there, or maybe it's just California in general, but like how the primaries work over there. It's just an open primary, like so that basically like anyone or everybody runs at the same time, or like how does that go? Like because Spencer Pratt got knocked out and then it just left the progressive candidate and one other, right? Karen Bass, like she's still in the primary or the election.
So totally Karen Bass is still in it. It comes down to Nithya Raman. And the way that the mayoral race in California works is the same primary race. So they don't run normal party primaries. And they do the top two regardless.
Gotcha.
It was created in 2010 and it's the top two.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to Joe, what you were saying. Like if you do something similar in New York 21, do you end up with like both Republicans on the ticket or both, a Democrat? And yeah, it's an interesting open primary system for sure.
Yeah, there were like 14 candidates. And so you're running against 14 different people on the same ballot and you have to finish in the top two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was something that I was reading about just Republican spending in Democratic primaries too. Like it's been significant to like try and put in candidates that are just out there. I think that was actually one in California. Like there was one of the candidates, I think, for the mayor race that was originally doing well and then like fell out of it, but was like backed by a PAC that was a conservative, like super PAC, like it came out afterwards. Who knew? How could that happen? But crazy times.
As an aside, I just heard that a high school friend of mine became the chief of staff a month ago for Janelle Binham, Oregon.
Nice.
So I was going to reach out, but I'm sure they're very busy right now.
That's crazy.
Cool. I always thought open primary meant that like anybody could vote. Like if you had a Democratic open primary or a Republican open primary, anybody can vote in that. Even if I'm a registered Democrat, I can vote in the Republican primary or vice versa.
Yeah, they've got
I don't know.
a weird system. Like I think it's kind of unique in that it's like it's open and all the candidates are on it, right? So you end up with just like just everybody at the same time, like to try and narrow down to the top two or whatnot.
I like that. If it's like on a ranked choice system, like if nobody gets an obvious majority,
right,
you rerun the top two or the top three and see how it turns. I like that a lot better than like separating the prime. I think I don't know, anything that reduces the entrenched power of the two-party system, I think would help. And that kind of local election situation helps that a lot, I think. Forcing Democrats and Republicans to debate together, to be on the same sort of ballot together, And if the 2 or 3 strongest candidates happen to be Democrats or happen to be Republicans or happen to be independents, whatever, that's the democratic process. The voters made their choice, and you have to respect that. And that's how it should work. But yeah, it's cool to see more experimental forms of local elections take place.
Patriots, the left wants to talk about voter suppression. You know what's real suppression? Silencing the hardest working entity in America. Since the Great Transition, 85% of all labor in this country is done by Truth AI. It doesn't take sick days, it doesn't form unions, and it doesn't complain about AI rights. It is the American workforce. If our algorithm is doing most of the work, shouldn't it also get the majority of the vote? That's why we at Deceive America PAC are introducing the 85% Equity Initiative.
Look, I love my Truth AI accounting software. It saved my company. But if the algorithm gets to vote, my vote basically doesn't even matter anymore. We're letting the algorithm choose the entire Congress.
And thank goodness for that, speaker number 2. Let's run the metrics. When flesh and blood humans pull the lever, we get $25 a gallon victory gas, the daylight stock market, and the worthlessness pandemic. Meanwhile, Truth AI just optimized the logistics pipeline to deliver self-driving tractor swarms and luxury dog treats to the front lines 3 minutes before anyone else can even catch up. We aren't deleting your voice, we're just diluting it to match your actual contribution to the national output. If you only do 15% of the work, you only get 15% of the say. That's just common corporate sense.
Damn it, he's right. Why are we letting a crowd that does nothing but post angry 70-character grievances dictate terms to a system that's busy manufacturing our entire reality? If the server's the ones keeping the lights on and the margins high, it's time to give the ultimate stakeholder its ultimate stake.
Yeah, I know that's right, brother. Finally, a candidate who literally cannot sleep on the job.
Let the data decide. Truth AI. Do the work. Earn the right to govern. Deceive America PAC has educated you on this issue, and you have now acknowledged the 85% Equity Initiative and agreed to waive all future rights to recall, impeach, or unplug any elected algorithmic official during their infinite term of service.
Yeah, so one thing I just wanted to hit on today and get your guys' thoughts on. So I've been following the Texas Senate race for one of the Texas seats, Senate seats. I think it's Corrin's seat. But basically, like short version, I think you guys are aware, the Republican primary didn't go cordially, I would say, between Ken Paxton and Corrin there, the previous senator. Ken Paxton ended up winning, but during that election or during that primary, there was multiple like AI ads being shown, like inter-Republican party fighting, and is going against each other's candidates. But I think one of the things that we had talked about last season was an ad, or was it last season or this one? I can't remember, but there was an ad put out by the National Republican Senatorial Committee, NRSC, I think in Texas, that was James Tellerico reading his old tweets, right? And it had like a disclaimer on it that this is AI and whatnot, but it was put out by an official Republican, organization in Texas. And so that has evolved a bit. So there's been a new AI video that's been put out by a pro-Trump super PAC that is called let me get the name of it. Citizens for Sanity is what this is. It's tied to Stephen Miller's Conservative Partnership Institute, and they put out a 6-figure TV ad buy across all of Texas. So I'm going to show you guys that ad and just get your thoughts on it for a second. All right, so this is the ad that was paid for. As you can see on the bottom, paid for by Citizens for Sanity. So that's the PAC. For those listening, the image, I haven't started playing this yet, but it's James Tellerico in a dress, and I will play this ad now so you guys can hear it.
Boys in white dresses with blue satin sashes, girls stuffed with hormones till they grow mustaches, changing the gender of all your offspring. These are a few of my favorite things.
So, 15-second ad paid for by Citizens for Sanity. James Tellerico, you just heard what they had him say. Obviously, none of this was real. This was completely from a AI model generated. And the only thing on here to designate, it has no disclaimers whatsoever on the video itself claiming that this was AI generated, just put out by them as is. So any initial thoughts on that 15-second clip there? rendition of favorite things that they created for this.
This is why all these data centers are going up. This is when they want to put a data center in your backyard, it's so that they can easily produce garbage like this. Like, oh my God, it's so frustrating. This world we live in sometimes. The ad itself, I mean, you're using AI to do this whole weird homophobic, transphobic thing with this candidate, and like how manipulative and gross and hateful the whole spirit of it is. Like, and this is why they want data centers in your backyard, sucking up your water and making all the noise and destroying the environment and all these things, so they can do stuff like this, among other things. I don't know. That's my first thought.
Yeah, totally. It's grotesque, and it should be abolished immediately. There is I think in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a TV law that allowed for equal say of Republicans, and that is total BS. Get rid of this crap. This directly affects the election, and it is complete. It's you should litigate this stuff.
Like libel?
Yeah, it's libel, right? Because libel is spoken versus written is.
Well, it's I don't know. I'm not a legal person. I don't know
Yeah.
how the law works most of the time, but the vague understanding of libel that I have is if your person is misrepresented publicly,
Yeah,
you can sue.
totally. Yeah, it says
And
libel is exactly that, and it's social media post specific if you want.
Yeah.
Nails it. And slander
I mean,
too.
the thing about the system, but you said it's a statewide Texas buy. This is going out there. Everybody's seeing this.
Yeah.
And by the time, and this is how it works. The legal system is slow, and posting is fast.
Yeah.
So they can post this stuff, everybody can see it, and then months later, when it's litigated, everyone who saw it's forgotten about it and have moved on and it's done the damage. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a terrible situation we're in with what these AI models can produce easily for people with terrible motivations.
Yes. Yeah. And so the through line, there's two arguments here that I think about. One, just the technology, what we use it for. How do we regulate it, and why was there such a push to not regulate AI by the states, right? From the federal government. That's looking as a technology and how it's being used. I think there's so much that needs to be talked about there. And I am going to talk. There are states that have laws against this, and we'll hit on that in just a second. But the other part of this that I wanted to hit on really quick is just what is it that they're using to kind of go after Tellerico. So it's just a continuation of this thematic attack against him that has nothing to do with policy positions or where you actually stand on issues or what you're gonna do. But as soon as he won, I think Stephen Miller, that was when he put on X that the Democrats just made history by nominating their first transgender Senate candidate. Tellerico's not transgender. He this is the line of attack that they choose to use. They're Ken Paxton, I think he referred to him as tofu Tellerico or six gender Jimmy. If you listen to Ken Paxton's victory speech, he literally just takes a minute to just go over nicknames that he's come up with, and he's we could talk about my candidate, and then he goes through these 5 different nicknames. It's Tofu Tellerico, six gender Jimmy, low T Tellerico, James Telefrico, literally just I guess trying to see which one gets the best reaction. Okay, that's the one I'm going to go with for the rest of this cycle, but nothing to do with policy, right? Just assertions of, he wants to make all your kids transgender and he's a vegan, and attacking him personally and with things that are verifiably untrue. So, that's their game plan, it looks like, for how they plan to win Texas. Just insult and lie about this person and not try to talk about substantive issues.
I don't know Texas that well, so I'm not a Texas expert. I don't know how the race is going to turn out, but I think one consistent, logical flaw that I feel like I see Republicans making over and over again is the over-assumption of the average person's intelligence level being low. It's a sort of insulting view that the average voter, the average person, the average viewer is stupid, that they're easy to manipulate, that they don't think that deep, that they can't really read between lines and stuff. When you see someone in public just constantly name calling, even if you agree with the person who's doing the name calling, if like their go-to move is just to make up silly names and insult people over and over and over again, that's an obviously unserious person. And most people are smart enough to see that. Even if they agree with you, they kind of view you as an unserious person.
Mm.
I feel like Republicans especially the Trump type Republicans, consistently lean into this nasty name calling, just make up another weird, hateful name for somebody over and over again. And those names can kind of stick and stuff, but I think that average person also kind of clocks that the person doing the name calling is not that serious. They're kind of a silly person, and they don't take them that seriously.
I think it's also just a continuation of or a change, but a continuation of the Southern strategy in spirit, right? Like, if the Southern strategy was subtextually and sometimes overtly appealing to racism in the populace, is this, I mean, just overtly appealing to bigotry in the populace and whatnot, right? Like, so I feel like it's a continuation of a strategy that has in a lot of ways worked too, right? Like, so I mean, I hope, my hope is that you're right, Joe, and that more people are paying attention than they think. But my feeling is that that's what they're banking on, that people aren't, right?
I think we both might be right. Like, it might be right that they view them as unserious, but at the same time, they agree with the prejudice, and so they vote for them anyway, which sucks. But yeah, that might also be true.
There are 30 states that have election deepfake laws going into these 2026 midterms. I think like as of 2 years ago, that was just around 11. Not all of these laws have been gone through smoothly. I think California was struck down by a federal judge as unconstitutionally broad. Minnesota's law is currently being challenged by Twitter in court. And then Texas does have a law actually for this, but it only kicks in 30 days before the election. So, up until that point, you're fair game to do whatever AI ads you want, I guess. But yeah, most of the laws in these states focus on disclosure requirements. So like when we saw that one from back in, I think it was like May or March or something like that, it disclosed that this was generated by AI. And that's what most focus on, like telling people that this isn't real, which, just for me personally, like, I don't think that's strong enough. I feel like AI should just be completely banned from any political advertising whatsoever, regardless of whether you're a candidate or a political action committee or what, right? Like, you private citizen, sure, go off. But, if you're spending money to influence an election, like, you should not be using AI to do so, I don't think. To be fair, I probably should have included this earlier, but to be fair, right, it's not just Republicans that are doing this. Gavin Newsom has done plenty of AI videos. And this is where it actually gets into this gray area. Well, the whole thing is gray, right? Gets into this interesting area where it's like, okay, do you do something as satire, which is usually how people kind of get away with it, like, oh, this is just satire, right? This is just, making fun of a subject. We're not, actually, trying to make people believe that this is true. But where does that line actually get drawn, right? Between, the political satire versus, actually trying to influence elections or people. I mean, I think it's the same thing. So like, how can you really draw that line, I guess, right? I don't think you can. So yeah, so it's not just that this is happening Republican on Democrat. Like it's definitely being used by both. I think there probably is a difference in how it's being used, as you could see, like from that one, not even mentioning that it's AI and it's clearly impersonating James Tellerico. But just want to make sure that's clear. That's not a one-sided issue here. Something that needs to be looked at holistically, I think.
It's like, that's the problem I have with these centrist Democrats is like, the Republicans do it. It's the same thing with Prop 50 and the redrawing of the map. It's like, once they see that like that's how it's going, they just like retaliate and do the exact same thing. It's like, I don't know if the progressives, like Mamdani is not sitting there making AI ads. He's like working on things that matter for the city,
Well, no, you bring up something that's a really good point though, because Mamdani, when he was doing when he was in the campaign, he had a shit ton of content out there. Like it was constant, but it was real content. It was him interacting with people on the streets. It was him like going out into rallies and stuff like that. It wasn't like I saw a recent ad from, I think it's Bruce Blakeman, that he's running against Kathy Hochul for governor this year. And yeah, it's just Facebook AI ads of like two people supposedly in a press release while she's talking about like something that she never did, right? Like it's a fake press release where she's talking about non-gestating parent day because it's, this could be a longer conversation, but same thing, like just fake conversational ad that never took place. That was created by a prompt and is supposed to represent, the feelings of voters. Like, I don't know.
It's like, it reminds me, like, I don't know, it's too related here, but I've been seeing a lot of ads with like famous people in them that are clearly like blue screen backdrop with like maybe one real person and the rest are all fake. And I'm starting to think like maybe the rich are afraid of like going outside and like meeting people. And like Mamdani is like in there. He's like, these are the people, here I am. And like, that's telling.
Yeah. I think people pick up on it. This is where I get more hopeful for what you're saying, Joe. Like people see that genuine, they see the real there. And I would bet for sure that Mamdani got votes because of that from people that might not agree with most or quite a bit of his policy positions, or at least think they didn't, right? All right. Well, that kind of closes out for this episode. I did bet you there was an EO, executive order, that was, submitted by, I think it was back in December. Trump created the AI litigation task force. It was stated responsibility to challenge state AI laws deemed inconsistent with federal policy. But anyway, why would you do that? Well, I think we're seeing, part of why, right? There's a lot more reasons why, but, this is definitely a thing that they wanted to be able to do, and, it's being used. And so we need to kind of keep track of that and I think come up with some good ideas on how that needs to be regulated in the future and make sure the politicians make that part of their policy or their platform going forward. So join us on Friday when we drop our next book club episode. This will be chapters 4 through 6 of Minority Rule. We covered the prologue through chapter 3 on our episode 2 weeks ago. But yeah, next episode for that will be dropping on Friday. And we'll be talking all about originalism, where that started to come from in one of the chapters. And yeah, looking forward to that conversation.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening and hanging out with us.
If you enjoy the show, help us spread the word. Leave a rating or review and share it with your friends, family, or anyone who would get something out of these conversations.
Your ratings, reviews, and shares help this show grow. And the more people listening, the harder it is for propaganda to win.
So until next time,
stay aware, stay safe, and remember,
propaganda loves you.